Several years ago, I had the chance to facilitate a structured brainstorming session. We took 40 executives to an off-site and we generated 50 ideas. We generated a lot of ideas using the structured brainstorming process. We were able to filter them down to 50 of the most powerful ones, and some of them were quite visionary as well. Now, as the head of innovation, I had the chance to coordinate the program. So every fortnight, we would have an update call to sync up on what progress we were making. To my dismay, I found that after a few times, people stopped attending these calls. And we were not making any progress, and we ended up with 0 ideas implemented out of these 50 powerful ideas. Now, this hit me as a ton of bricks. How could this happen? I have been a believer of the structured brainstorming process for 10-15 years, and that's what I applied during these sessions. Now, we collectively came with these ideas, but we were not able to motivate our team members. How could this happen? This really had me perplexed. And maybe this is one of the big learning moments of my career so far. Now, if we look back at the 5th discipline, one of the disciplines is shared vision, which Senge talks about. And he also mentioned that visions die prematurely in many organizations, and we can all attest to that through our own experience. Obviously, the balancing loop kicks in. Now, according to Senge, he makes another interesting observation that it is not lack of merit that kills visions. We might have thought that to be the case, but that's not true. He says it's the lack of commitment that kills the vision. Now, if you look at the structured brainstorming process, by definition, it gets the buy-in and commitment of the people in the group. So, why weren't we not able to implement these ideas? The other one in the 5th discipline is team learning, which requires collaboration. Now, collaboration is hard, but isn't structured brainstorming where we sit down and prioritize the list of things collectively and work on them? Wouldn't that be a good starting point? So, why weren't we not able to implement these ideas? So, from both these perspectives, it is clear that there is something was going on. Obviously, the collaboration also has a balancing loop. And the typical barriers that people will attribute the barriers to are clashing egos, differences in priorities of the stakeholders, and so on. But I felt that there was something about collaboration we were missing. So there is a real bottom of the iceberg barrier, and why were these things derailing the collaboration process? This is what I set out to find.
I really covers a very good case study there. In terms of the Betty Crocker cake mix story. Betty Crocker cake mix is a popular product. When it was first introduced, the recipe was you take the cake mix, add water, pop it into the oven, and out comes the cake. Now they expected this product to be a hit because there is an American tradition of baking cakes for special occasions, and they thought this would be popular, but then the sales was very poor. So they invited experts, they dug deeper into it and found out that people who baked the cake using the mix found that it was a fake accomplishment because they didn't really do much. They just added water, and that didn't seem like a good thing to do for special occasions. So Betty Crocker removed some of the key ingredients, chief amongst them the eggs, and then the recipe now said take the mix, whip eggs, add them and add these 2 or 3 more ingredients and then bake the cake. Now the sales took off. So A really refers to this as the IKEA effect after the popular furniture company where we assemble the furniture and we become attached to the furniture. He gives another interesting experiment. In this experiment, participants were given 2 ideas to solve a problem that was also defined for them. The first idea was given as is, and the second idea was given in the form of jumbled words. And the participants had to first unjumble the ideas to understand what it was. Then they were asked to rate which idea was better. Surprisingly, they rated the unjumbled idea higher. The mere act of unjumbling gave them ownership over that idea. This, Dan Ariely calls as the explanation for the not invented here syndrome, which I started calling the tiny IKEA effect. Now, due to both these reasons, the bottom of the iceberg is that we don't buy into others' ideas. So, what happened with the 50 ideas was people below us didn't really buy into those ideas because it wasn't theirs. So, what exactly should we do? We should start with problems. Be it an innovation initiative or a collaboration, it's better to start with problems. And if they be customer problems, it's much easier to rally around. And when people generate their own ideas to solve the problems, they develop ownership over it. This is how we drive the initiative. Now, there's an even bigger reason as to why we shouldn't be starting with ideas.
A few years ago, I had chanced upon an unpublished essay of Isaac Asimov that he had written in the year 1959. In that, he mentions a statement in passing. The world in general disapproves of creativity, and to be creative in public is particularly bad. Now, as someone passionate about ideas and innovation, this had me completely perplexed. Could this even be true? By some chance, I read a research paper published in the year 2011 by Cornell University, which proved Asimov's hypothesis that we do have a bias against creativity. Even though we desire ideas, we reject them, maybe because the paper concluded that it triggers negative emotions like uncertainty and so on. Now, to show you all how this bias against creativity might work, I took one example from history. In the year 1920, New York Times wrote a scathing editorial about Professor Robert Goddard's plan to launch rockets into outer space. Professor Goddard, later known to be the father of modern rocketry. New York Times concluded that he didn't even know Newton's third law, which was being ladled out daily in high school physics across the country. To their credit, in 1969, after Apollo 11 took off for the moon, New York Times printed a correction to their 1920 editorial saying that yes, rockets can function in a vacuum. Now, this is not an unusual circumstance. History shows that almost every major radical breakthrough faced a similar ridicule. Interestingly, Albert Einstein himself ridiculed the atomic bomb, which was based on his theory of E equal to mc square. He said that atoms cannot be split at will because he couldn't anticipate the invention of the chain reaction. People will asphyxiate and die on high-speed trains. No one will watch the TV after 6 months because it could be very boring. Heavier than air aircraft is impossible. And the list of such ridicule for many inventions and breakthroughs goes on in history. Of what I started calling Asimov's axiom, that we all disapprove creativity, and that is the biggest reason why we should not start our innovation projects with ideas.